So we are in the home stretch of Married at First Sight UK Season 7. We got these final dates we got to talk about. Vow renewals are coming up and even the reunion all within the next 7 days. So it's been a long one. It's been a crazy one. But before we even get that far, let's talk about these final dates. Hey, you guys, welcome back to Romance Review TV with Lady T. We're going to do this recap of Married at First Sight UK Season 7, Episode 25. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay, so we're going to start off first with April and George. And I guess from the way it looks, April have been teaching him how to break some of his fear factor moments. And this time they're going up in an airplane. Now, he did seem kind of hesitant. And basically, I think she was trying to build trust. Because it's one thing to try to get somebody to trust you. But when you kind of take these levels of what they're doing with trying to face certain fears, it kind of can help you kind of break through that whole trust barrier. And it looked like this is something that happened at this particular final date, where this is part of her life because she's going to get her pilot's license. And he actually enjoyed being able to be up in those friendly skies with her. However, they did have a sit-down conversation, and he really put his heart out on the table. He actually said that he's fallen in love with April and that he feels that he can actually trust her implicitly at this point, because you know where they started off at the beginning of the season, especially on the honeymoon with her in the hot tub. But at this point, it seems like they were making great strides. And again, you know, there's a lot of controversy around George right now, even though he vehemently denies it all. And I'm assuming they actually stayed together after the season ended, and then she left based on the, you know, what was heard. So, I mean, at this point, it looked like they're in the home stretch and they were doing well. Okay, new couple, Whitney and Matt. We actually got to see them on their final dates, and they were in this luxury suite in a high rise. And I mean, they had all of the stops, the little tub, and the chocolate strawberries, and they actually pushed the envelope with this. And they know that a lot of the fans are not feeling this couple, but then to take it to the level where they're actually having a scene in a bathtub where they're really enjoying each other and they're speaking about life outside of the experiment, where they're going to be in 5 years. Whitney actually said that she wanted to be married to Matt in 5 years, and they see themselves being together, living together, just being happy. And they know a lot about each other because they did these little questions about how much do you know about me. I will say zodiologically they're a match. She's a Scorpio, he's a Pisces. So I found that pretty interesting. I know I do that on this channel, but I mean, the girl has big smiles. She seems to be in a whole different energy space. And I gotta say, Matt tried to throw a little shade over at Duca with that whole question about what she don't want in a man. And he was like, hold on, let me go pull up Duca outside the door. I was like, ooh, yikes. So I know that didn't sit well with a lot of folks. And if Duca was watching this, it probably didn't sit well with him either. But these two are making strides. I follow them on IG, and they seem to be extremely happy, and they really don't care what the public says. So we'll have to continue to watch, but at this point, they're doing well. So next up is Sophie and Jonathan. Now, they were one of my favorite couples outside of Shanita and Jordan. They started out their wine tasting date very well. Now, this is where I have a couple of issues with both of them. So when it was time to have the deep conversation, and he brought up, well, what are some things you think you need to change within the marriage, she got offended. Now, my thing is, nobody's perfect. You've only known each other less than a couple months. So there's some growth that has to happen. I don't know why she took offense to that, and it changed the trajectory of this date. On the flip side, because he was being straightforward, when she reacted to it, he tried to dial it back and call it a joke. No, it wasn't a joke. It was a perfectly valid question because it's something that should be asked. And probably if she had answered it, he would have said, I probably need to do this. And he actually did say it at the end of their conversation that he needed to continue to work on his communication. However, it turned into this whole mess about her being offended about how he say things. And the thing is that you got people that are very straightforward. And myself, I appreciate those people because I'd rather know what you're coming from and not tell me what I want to hear and lie to my face. So if you asking me, what do you think you should change in this relationship? I'm going to put it on the table. And I expect that other person to do the same. But for some reason, she felt offended by this. And it took the date on a whole different turn. And then for him to say, well, I was just joking. No, that's not the right way to handle that. Explain why you were coming from whatever place with that question so you guys can get a better understanding together. And they didn't do that. However, they did kind of bring it down to a Zen level and start having the actual conversation. And then they had to kind of bring it out and say, my communication, and I need to, be able to listen. They talked about, her, being financially in a good place and, that. So they were able to finally get back to a good place with each other. When it's bad with them, it's bad. When it's good, it's great. So we'll see how they can continue as we get to the home stretch. Okay, now we got Thomas and Adrian, and he planned the date, meaning Adrian, and it doesn't look like Thomas is too happy. I think he expected spa treatment, and instead he got farming, and this is something that he's definitely not into. He wanted to be pampered and take a Zen moment in a spa, and he's like, what made you think that this was a date that you wanted to take me on? And Adrian was like, oh, I kind of want to take us back to our honeymoon. Well, as we remember, and also as Thomas brought up in this episode, that he said that the honeymoon crashed and burned. Then to make it worse, because they also did this on the honeymoon, was to get on these dune buggies, which, as we remember, Thomas had a horrible time. So, of course, replaying that now at the final date, which didn't go well on the honeymoon, Thomas was like, what are you thinking? So he pretty much walked off because he was not in a good space. So they finally did have some opportunity to sit down and talk, because at this point, Thomas was like, why didn't I just go ahead and leave from the last commitment ceremony? But the intimacy conversation came up where he wondered if at whatever point they were going to be intimate. And Adrian was like, oh yeah, at some point we are. It's just that I'm not ready yet. And of course, when he said that, Thomas's face lit up like a Christmas tree. And then this is where the conversation went to talk about bondage and chains and whips and things like that, which is obviously right up Thomas's sleeve. And I'm assuming Adrian was here for it. So it turned out to be a great date for them in the end. So now it's Jenna and Zoe's turn, and they actually had the date that I think Thomas actually wanted, because they had this little fire pit and a picnic scene, and I thought this was really nice, and even a little hot tub. And so they actually had a good time. Pretty much what their conversation was surrounded by was how the process went for them overall. Especially when it came to the whole vegan versus meat eating, the conversation about, their housing as they live, I think, 3 hours away from each other. And then also about kids. Because that was a conversation that was brought up at the homestays with the family. But, they're taking it one day at a time. And they're trying to meet in the middle when it comes to figuring out the housing scenario, and they were able to work through their two different lifestyles. So it seemed like they're doing pretty well at this point, and they made a lot of strides. They put in the work. They seem to be happy with each other. The intimacy is there, and Zoe even gifted her, which I thought was so creative, with all of the little stay messages from all of the commitment ceremonies that they said stay at. So I've never seen that at any of the UK or AU versions, so I thought that was really creative, and that was a first. And Jenna actually loved it. So I can see them moving past the experiment, as long as they keep doing the work and work through it. And I honestly think that they're going to make it. I do follow them as well on IG. And last but not least, my favorite couple, Shanita and Jordan. Now, they've only had little hiccups this season, especially about the I'm not moving in until I feel like I'm in love with you, with coming from Jordan to Shanita, and she was almost trying to take some step back. But they had a little movie date where they actually got the opportunity to, watch their journey, the wedding day back, and it was very romantic with a glass of wine and some popcorn. But they really bonded even further, seeing how it all began. And actually, they were one of the first weddings that was aired this season. Actually, the first wedding that was aired this season, I remember. And it really set off the rest of the season, because I was like, oh yeah, I love this already. So these two are so happy with each other. They making plans, life outside, moving arrangements. So I really don't have too much to say about them, except the fact that I've enjoyed their journey. Okay, so let's get the conversation started. What did you think about the dates in these final dates for Married at First Sight couples? And we got a dinner party coming up, the final dinner party, and it looked like it's going to be crazy. So we got to stay tuned. So until the next video, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you soon. Bye.